On air, the first ever American Pope has been elected as the new head of the Roman Catholic Church. Robert Prevost, he is addressing the crowd in St. Peter's Square right now. Let's go to Vatican City.
Ha acompañado a su obispo, ha compartido su fe y ha dado tanto para seguir siendo iglesia fiel de Jesucristo. A tutti voi, fratelli e sorelle, di Roma, d'Italia, di tutto il mondo, vogliamo essere una chiesa sinodale, una chiesa che cammina, una chiesa che cerca sempre la pace, cerca sempre la carità, cerca sempre di essere vicino specialmente a coloro che soffrono. Oggi il giorno della supplica alla Madonna di Pompei. Nostra Madre Maria vuole sempre camminare con noi, stare vicino, aiutarci con la sua intercessione e il suo amore. Allora vorrei pregare insieme a voi. Preghiamo insieme per questa nuova missione, però per tutta la Chiesa, per la pace nel mondo, e chiediamo questa grazia speciale di Maria, nostra Madre. Ave Maria, piena di grazia, il Signore è con te. Tu sei benedetta fra le donne e benedetto è il frutto del tuo seno, Gesù. Santa Maria, Madre di Dio, prega per noi peccatori, adesso e nell'ora della nostra morte. Amen.
Well, there we just heard the words from the first ever American Pope, Robert Prevost, who was born in Chicago but speaking perfect Italian there. He was addressing the crowd in St. Peter's Square. He addressed the brothers and sisters in Italy and around the world. He talked of a church that seeks peace, always seeking peace and always to help those who are suffering. And he urged people to pray together. Well, among the crowd there witnessing these scenes is our correspondent, Geraint Vincent, also in the Vatican City for us this evening. And Geraint, quite a moment in history.
Yes, indeed, Lucrezia. And what this conclave has proved is don't always listen to the experts. Seasoned Vatican watchers were telling us that this was going to be a long conclave because there were more voting cardinals than there ever have been. They're all from diverse backgrounds, from countries that have never had a cardinal before. And because many of them have only been appointed in the last 12 years, they didn't know each other very well. Well, so much for all of that. At least 2/3 of the voting cardinals have found common ground, and they've done so after only 4 rounds of voting. And that common ground has been found in the person of Robert Prevost, who'll be known as Pope Leo XIV, born in Chicago, member of a religious order, St. Augustine, spent decades working as a missionary in Peru. Here's Martha Fairley now on the events of the last few hours here in Rome and the start of a new era.
Habemus Papam.
Habemus Papam. We have a Pope. After 4 votes, the announcement by the senior cardinal that the conclave have chosen their new supreme pontiff.
Robertum Franciscum, Sancte Romane Ecclesiae, Cardinalem Prevost.
Robert Prevost is the world's first ever American-born Pope. Stepping out onto the balcony of the Sistine Chapel, dressed in the white papal robes, Pope Leo XIV, as he will be known, was greeted by a crowd of 40,000, all desperate to see the 267th Pope chosen to lead the Catholic Church. An hour earlier, as the first wisps of white smoke became a billowing plume, Cheers of jubilation and applause rose with it above St. Peter's Square. For 2 days, the eyes of the faithful and the long lenses of the world's press have been fixed on the chimney above the Sistine Chapel, awaiting the confirmation that a new pope has been elected. Chants of Viva il Papa, long live the Pope, soon followed. As the bells reverberated around the Vatican, the emotion of this historic moment sank in. There had been disappointment earlier today as 2 unsuccessful rounds of voting followed another last night. The black smoke of the fumata indicating the conclave of 133 cardinals had not yet come to an agreement. But the appearance of white smoke just after 6 o'clock this evening indicated that at least 89 votes had been secured by the cardinals selected to be the successor to Pope Francis. And after just 4 rounds of voting, the Vatican press office says this is a clear sign of the unity of the Church. Martha Fairley, ITV News.
Well, there you go. Let's just return there to those scenes there. St. Peter's Square, the new Pope, Robert Francis Prevost, Leo XIV, has just addressed the crowd there. We're going to speak to our correspondent, Geraint Vincent. He's also there. Geraint, you know, we get a sense of the mood there. We get a sense of the feeling there, the excitement, I suppose. You know, just describe to us exactly what it's like being there in this moment right now.
Oh, well, the mood when I was in St. Peter's Square earlier today, Lucrezia, I'm about 150 yards away from it in our live position here. But when I was there earlier today, it was one of celebration and happiness among the faithful who'd come just to be present at this, what always is an enormously important junction in the life of the faithful in the Catholic Church. Pope Leo, in his opening remarks there, spoke of the need for unity and the need to build bridges. And I think in answer to the question of whether or not the appointment of this Pope was going to be an endorsement or a rejection of the legacy of the last Pope, Pope Francis, well, I think Pope Leo is very much, and he was seen beforehand, as very much the compromise candidate. He was appointed by Pope Francis in 2023. And Pope Francis, quite apart from his liberal views on gay people, on the involvement of women in the church, in his practice he was the Pope who went to migrant camps to wash the feet of refugees. But his approach to the papacy was politically radical as well. He would make statements on big issues and announce visits to countries without any reference to the power structures here in the Vatican, the Curia as it's known, the civil service, or the equivalent of the civil service in the Vatican. And there were those here who were saying that the Catholic Church needed to return to Rome, to procedure, to doctrine. And I think in electing Pope Leo, the conclave perhaps said that maybe so, but we want to retain some of that grassroots, very human approach that Pope Francis adopted.
All right, Geraint, thank you very much. We're just going to stay on these pictures at the Vatican City while we actually move over to Washington and talk to our correspondent, Robert Moore. Robert, how is the news of the first ever American Pope, Pope Leo, being received there?
Well, it's seen as a remarkable moment, obviously for American Catholics, but all Americans now scrambling to discover more about the biographical and theological background of Leo XIV. It's interesting, he's 69 years old, he comes from the great American Midwestern city of Chicago. He studied mathematics at college before going on to study theology. He worked in Peru for many years in the 1980s as a missionary, as an Augustinian there, before he moved to Rome. And that's a key detail because, of course, he is also a man who has worked in the field, but also knows the papal bureaucracy. He's taken, interestingly, the name of Leo XIV, and that is seen widely as here already as a sort of testimony to Leo XIII, who was a pivotal and long-serving pope at the end of the 19th and beginning of the 20th century. Leo XIII was a reformer. He addressed workers' rights, safe conditions for workers. So he was seen as a man who was widely engaged in sort of social justice issues. So it's seen already that this election of Robert Francis Prevost, the Leo XIV, is a tribute to that. You know, many critics will say, look, this is another American, you know, already a dominant force in the world, but it's being suggested that's the wrong prism to see this man and this election through. Rather, he's multilingual, he has traveled around the world, he sees himself primarily as a humble missionary and perhaps therefore a worthy successor to Pope Francis.
All right, Robert Moore in Washington there, thank you very, very much. Amazing scenes there. We've seen the Vatican City, what an amazing shot there, and the people still celebrating. Quite a few American flags in the crowd as well. We're going to talk now to our international affairs analyst, Raghi Omar, who joins me in the studio. Now, this was a surprise election, not one of the front runners.
No, certainly not one of the front runners. And as Geraint was saying earlier, don't trust any experts or people punting, you know, who they think would be appointed Pope. It came from left of field, but in some ways, as Robert was suggesting there, Pope Leo XIV ticks a lot of boxes. He is American born, and that's very important given the geopolitical context. But he's also worked in the field in South America, where the largest growth of the Catholic population is happening, not just in Latin America, but in Asia as well. But he's also an insider within the Vatican City. You know, the Catholic Church, 1.4 billion people, faces a huge amount of challenges, not just on doctrinal issues, in terms of LGBTQ, in terms of women, in terms of divorcees, but it also has to evangelize. And that's the other aspect of him being an American, because you know, the most powerful sort of Christian movement within America is, of course, the evangelical movement, but the Pope and the Catholic Church is in the business of evangelizing. I think one of the interesting things was also, of all the flags, there were American flags, but there was a multitude of other flags from all over the world, and he can speak to all of them. He speaks many languages, he's lived in many different continents, so I think he ticks all the boxes, and I'm not surprised that they chose him in many ways, with hindsight.
And a relatively short conclave.
Very short conclave. I mean, Pope Benedict, I think, was 2 days as well. So was Pope Francis, but he was chosen quicker within those 2 days than either of them. And I think that that's a sort of sign in which, you know, I keep coming back to this point, he does fit and tick all the boxes. And also in terms of his views on all the sort of really difficult doctrinal issues, he's a diplomat. I mean, he's sort of patient. He's classed as sort of moderate. So that's why I think he had momentum behind him, clearly.
Yeah, well, listen, a very, very big job there for the new Pope, Robert Francis Prevost, born in Chicago, who will go by the name of Leo XIV.